The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. I'm David Morton, a Change Management Project Officer at the Improvement Service, and we've been running this webinar series for about 9 months as part of the Change Managers Network. There'll be links on how to join this at the end. Just to go through the housekeeping for the session, we will have about a 30-minute presentation from Richard Morrison and Rebecca McDonald from East Renfrewshire Council, which will be followed by a question and answer session. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, can you please post these as they come to you, and then that way we can move smoothly into the question and answer session at the end. Also, if you have access to a microphone, can you please indicate this when you ask a question, and that way we can unmute you and you can personally ask your question. This session will be recorded, and links on how to access the recording and slides will be available after the session. I think that's all from me, so I'll just hand over to Richard and Rebecca to take you through the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. I'm Rebecca McDonald, and I'm one of the Change Programme Managers that work as part of the Programme Management Office, the PMO, in East Renfrewshire Council. I'm with Richard, as David said, and Richard is the overall manager of the PMO. And today we're going to talk you through East Renfrewshire Council's qualifications in change and project management, which are the Yellow Belt for the Tutor Award and the SQA PPA in project management. So our agenda this morning is to give you a little background as to why the Council had to take a fresh approach to managing its change agenda and to make the organisation fit for future. To give you a bit about the PMO and its approach to support the qualifications, some information about the qualifications themselves, some case study insights into what the qualifications have delivered for the Council, signpost the way forward if anyone is interested in our approach to all of this, and lastly a Q&A session that David will help facilitate, as he said. So, as with all public bodies, the Council had to think of innovative ways to meet the challenges outlined here on this slide, the financial pressures, the changing demographics and shifting demands, and trying to bring into play emerging technologies to modernise our service delivery. I draw your attention to the fact that in all of this we had to think of ways of spending less to work towards meeting these challenges, and so our strategy became focused on building more in-house capability and capacity. So as with all organisations, we were dealing with characters like this in managing change. Draw attention to some of them. We've got the change victim in the bottom row. We've got the change bystander and change critic who, despite best efforts to make change happen and get projects across the line in the organisation, were hell-bent on driving the complete opposite direction. Also like to bring your attention to the change agent in the top row, bit of a scary change agent corporate character that we had, and not really well structured in managing the change that the Council and the organisation wanted to take forward. So that's what we were sort of dealing with and how the organisation had to move on from that. And to overcome it, there were some key strategic developments, as you'll see on this slide. I'd like to draw your attention to the circled one, Modern Ambitious Programme. This is MAP, our Modern Ambitious Programme of Change, that pulled together the Council's change activity to meet the challenges outlined, as I said, under one overarching governance umbrella. What this means is that each department has a change board comprising of senior managers and has a change programme to fit their business requirements in line with achieving outcomes, meeting our 5 organisational capabilities, which are all about prevention, community engagement, data management, modernising how we do things, and going digital, as well as trying to realise cashable efficiencies. And from this change programme at department level, it feeds into our CMT, which is our corporate management team comprising of directors, and they have oversight of all the sort of corporate change initiatives that are taken forward and of the overall decision-making body in the process. From all this, we derived our qualifications to shape up projects that fit in with departmental programme changes, that fit into the corporate programme change agenda, to help deliver what was required to make the council fit for future. So, as we said, we were trying to encourage and support service-based employees to take on these qualifications and in effect turn the agents of change, the corporate scary characters, to actually service-based, skilled project managers based within departments who are supported by the PMO. So we try to change the face of change from this to our PMO. Our PMO is our Programme Management Office for East Renfrewshire, and we're key to supporting employees in their qualification journey and making change happen. We're a happy bunch, as you can see, and it even includes East Renfrewshire's own Right Said Fred tribute act, as you'll see, the two characters in the middle, Richard and Fraser. The PMO was recruited with a blend of private sector and public sector experience, with a raft of change and project management experience from Prince to MSP Lean Six Sigma. And Richard leads the team with 4 change programme managers and a dedicated finance change business manager. And together we work with corporate core colleagues such as ICT partners, other finance partners, HR, procurement, and the team of project managers and yellow belts that we've managed to establish across the organisation to date to make change happen, feed into departmental change programmes and ultimately into the corporate change programme at CMT level. Going to move on to the qualifications themselves now. What we wanted to do was to establish a formal qualification path for employees. Previously, people were trying to tinker with project management and trying to, or actually get no recognition for the work that they were doing. So we wanted to formalise how we did this and really embed the in-house capacity to run both service reviews and the projects that led on from the service reviews and drive a culture of change across the council. So a bit about the specifics here. We have the yellow belt and the PDA. The PDA was developed with the organisational development team in HR and the PMO, and in conjunction with the SQA itself and the Chartered Institute of Management. The qualification is Prince2 based, and what the PMO did was sort of use the Prince2 principles and translate it into layperson's terms so that actually project managers with no previous project experience could embrace those principles and put them into practice. The qualification itself comes in at HND level and SQCF level 8, and it has 2 core units with 8 specific outcomes and competencies. And if anyone was interested in using this type of qualification, you need to align with the SQA requirements in this respect of what their specific outcomes are for a project management qualification and the competencies associated with it. To deliver the qualification, it has extensive PMO coaching support, and that's really been a key to some of the successes that we've had. We've used some of that material and developed case studies for the candidates, so as well as delivering projects, they need to do some theoretical exercises to show an understanding of things like financial management, project planning, risk management, and they need to deliver one successful project to actually attain the qualification, and that's accredited by the SQA, as I said. The Yellow Belt for the Future Award is based on the principles of Lean and Six Sigma. This is an East Renfrewshire internal award, and it's based around a candidate undertaking a service review, and by that I mean by going into a service area, looking at it end to end, every aspect from HR, structures, financial structures, process structures, looking at their performance and management information to really understand what the opportunities for change could be that would then lead into projects and nicely tie in with the SQA project management approach. To deliver the Yellow Belt, it's 2 days training, and that's delivered by the PMO, and there's quite a significant part of coaching on the PMO's part to make this get the candidates, support the candidates and get it over the line. So that's just a little bit about the 2 qualifications. To get us started, you need to have an SQA register centre In East Renfrewshire, we were quite fortunate because our work ER team, which is the sort of employability team, are already registered with the SQA in terms of delivering SVQs, etc. So we piggybacked onto that register centre in order to get us aligned with SQA and take the qualification forward. The one thing I would say is that you have to conform with the SQA requirements in terms of paperwork and some of their very manual processes that they currently have in place, which can be a bit cumbersome. But I guess the benefit is the candidate comes out the other end with a fully recognised qualification under the auspices of SQA. And we're actually trying to work with SQA to change how some of that's done, some of the manual and labour-intensive recording of evidence of projects that candidates need to do. As I've said, the PMO supports this qualification in project management, and we have a structure where each candidate on the course is allocated a coach that supports them in whatever way they see fit. It could be attending meetings, supporting them in pulling together presentation packs, facilitation, process mapping, data analysis, all this kind of thing. And the rigour of the SQA means that each candidate, the work produced needs to be independently assessed. So the PMO also allocate an assessor to do that. And then there is the internal verification process. Again, it's another PMO member of staff who verifies that everything, there has been due process applied in terms of meeting the SQA requirement. It's independently checked and that the candidate's work is valid and is worthy of the SQA qualification. The PMO also assume the role of trainers, and we do quite a lot of training across the organisation, but particularly with SQA candidates, to teach them the rudiments of project management using our Prince2 based methodology, showing them the templates and showing them how their project fits in with the overall governance arrangements in terms of change boards, feeding into CMT. A prerequisite for the PMO was to put together CVs and lodge them with the SQA to show that you would be a fit and proper assessor or verifier against their standards. Fortunately, because of the raft of experience the team had, this was done no problem at all. If, however, the team that you might be interested in pulling together to support a qualification like this, if they're not as experienced, you might need to go through a training process and maybe pass some sort of assessment yourself to get the qualification and assessing and verification. And obviously the SQA would charge for that. The other thing we would say in terms of setting up the qualification, it's quite good to purchase an SQA development day, and they send out an expert in the field of project management who's one of their registered markers, and they help you devise your material and tweak the material to meet the standards that they set for their qualification. The other prerequisite I would say is having access to a PC-based training room. And we know in terms of data analysis and that sort of thing, you need to know how to use things like Excel and other data analysis tools. And culturally, that was a gap that we had. So we had to try and make sure we had an IT suite available to deliver some of this training so that people knew how to actually properly analyse data so that we understand how services currently operate to get the best opportunities for change. So the process to apply to get on either the Yellow Belt course or the SQA course, you need to have a bona fide piece of work to do. So for Yellow Belt, you need to have a service review that's been supported by your line manager, head of service, and that your director knows about it so that it is aligned with departmental change programmes. In terms of the SQA qualification, you need to have a project to deliver, and again that needs sign off by senior management in your department to make sure it is aligned to this overall change agenda. Normally, there are a variety of grades that can apply in terms of employees. We set the bar at grade 9, which is an East Renfrewshire grading, but someone who is empowered enough, probably supervisor level upwards, empowered enough to make some decisions in projects, get respect within the department and given a bit of leeway to actually take forward the change that they've been asked to do. They need to complete a formal application form so that this is submitted and it's screened by the PMO and the organisational development team just to make sure that the strategic alignment with the overall change programme is there and that the candidate probably has a fighting chance of delivering on the service reviewing project and attaining the qualification. The candidates then attend a very brief induction session, which means the PMO come and let them know who their coach is going to be, who their assessor is going to be, and who the internal verifier will be for their qualification. It also sets out the registration arrangements for SQA if the candidates are doing the SQA project management qualification. There's a skills assessment session where we have linked in with an external training organisation. Part of the SQA requirement is that candidates are assessed on persuading and influencing skills. And we do this by means of a role play with the candidate, and the assessment is supported by the external training body. In terms of the yellow belt, it's 2 days training that's required. 1 day is PC based, as I've said, mainly Excel based, to show candidates how they can interpret and analyse HR information in terms of working patterns, number of FTE, number of heads, and look at patterns in overtime, expenditure, that sort of thing. There's a financial aspect in terms of looking at income and other expenditure areas for the service, and looking at demand analysis, so how they would take a team or a service through doing a demand analysis exercise and understanding and interpreting that information once it's complete. The PMO need to support that in terms of coaching, following up in the training, and that can be between 4 to 6 1-hour sessions for the duration of their service review. In terms of the PDA, the coaches play a key part in supporting candidates. It's a blended learning approach. We have training, tutorials and coaching sessions. Again, probably 4 to 6 1-hour coaching sessions for each candidate during the life cycle of the project. There's some e-learning as well, but the most important thing is for both Yellow Belt and the PD in project management that they do apply their skills practically, and it's the practical output of their service review and projects that they are assessed on to actually make a difference to the organisation, as well as them attaining the personal qualification. So the course, it's applying the techniques covered at training. Some of them I've mentioned. It's letting them understand what the governance procedures are. We do training on process mapping, data collation, data analysis. Also things like facilitation and presentation skills. If you have a supervisor maybe applying to do this course, they've never presented maybe in front of a director or a head of service before, so it's quite important to build those confidence skills and let them know how these things should be pitched to such an audience. And then finally keep an eye on the to-be analysis. So once they've mapped out the as-is, they need to look at the opportunities for to-be and put together a set of recommendations and redesign proposals that could be presented to a head of service or director in line with the change board agendas that we've talked about. In terms of the PDA, this slide outlines the SQA definitions of what's required in terms of the course, and we tailor our training around meeting these requirements. So Unit 1 in our training really takes care of the first 2 bullets here, and Unit 2 takes care of the rest. And it's all about setting up a project, planning, scoping, setting objectives, putting business cases together as appropriate, managing risks, understanding the financial process to get funding for projects and that kind of thing, and how that ties in with the organisational approach to funding projects. Looking at communication during the life cycle of a project, how to engage with stakeholders at all levels, producing the appropriate documentation. And so the documentation we generally use is a project mandate at the start of our project, and that goes to the change boards for each department to get approval for the idea and concept of the project. That's then detailed a little bit more in terms of a project brief document that tells you a bit more about the resource required in terms of the project manager and other key parties, perhaps from the corporate core, as I've mentioned, to take the project over the line. But the project is really seen through by what we call a PID, And it's perhaps not the traditional sense of PID that's used in Prince 2. It's a set of PowerPoint slides that lets you tell the story. It's the storyboard of the project from start to finish, that's updated as things move in the project. And it saves you right now a War and Peace lengthy Word document. Candidates can abbreviate and just make it as simple as possible to record what happens during their project, from changes of scope, risks and issues, dependencies. Everything that happened is recorded in the PID document. I'm now going to pass over to Richard, who's going to tell you some case study information, what we've actually got out of these qualifications.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hopefully everyone can hear me. The idea of these next slides is to give you an idea of the projects and the reviews that the candidates have managed over the length of this programme. I'm not going to bore you with any detail, but there's a couple of key points I'd like to highlight. You'll see on the next slide. Who's on the next slide? Okay, here we go, the next slide. Right, a couple of key points I'd like to highlight from this slide. You'll see that the SQA part at the top, we've actually got 16 people qualified now in project management, and we've got another 7 in training. On the yellow belt side, we've only just started this particular course, and we currently have 9 people in training. The detail below gives you an idea of the range of projects and service reviews that we're actually trying to cover here. You know, ranging from an HR review to accreditor's review, projects on housing, mobile, off-street parking, road system, etc., etc. A couple of key points I'd like to highlight about this. One is that one of the key things I'd like to highlight is that all of the candidates here, and the recurring theme from this, is all of the candidates believed that the team support and the ability to actually do a real project was very helpful here. So, and I'll give you a bit more detail on that when you see the projects at the bottom that are highlighted in yellow. Okay, care at home is one of the first ones I'd like to talk to you about. Now this is what we would call our exemplar project. And as I say, a couple of key points here. We used an operational home care manager that hadn't any experience of project management. This person came in fresh, and the good news is that after about a year, we've managed to save about 440k cashable savings, but more importantly, we've actually radically changed how this service is. We've introduced smartphones, we've removed spreadsheets, and this has been probably our best example or our best success. The candidate himself has benefited from the ability of knowing how to plan ahead, structure a project, and basically feeling empowered to go and make things happen. And what we're finding now is that that person's now on their own. They've got another probably 11 smaller projects as part of this program to run, and they're managing that very successfully themselves with very little help from the PMO. The second one I'd like to highlight is supported living. That's on the next slide. And this says, again, we took a manager from basically in-house, and this is again a person who had no experience of project management, doing process mapping, any of that stuff. And again, what we managed to achieve here is 170k savings. But more importantly, as you see at the bottom here, this particular person, who was a little bit short in confidence when we started, is now very confident, again feels quite empowered, and has actually got a good knowledge of project management skills and the ability of how to conduct a service review. The other key point I would mention is that this particular manager is now an ambassador for change and is currently supporting the third sector organisation with all aspects of change, so another success for us there. Moving on, the third one I'd like to highlight is Giffnock Library. Now the purpose here was to develop an old library that was getting quite staid into a vibrant community hub. Again, we took a culture and sport officer who had no experience of project management, and we spent a lot of time with this person, how to construct the project, how to actually work as a team, and probably in this particular example, team working was absolutely key here. Again, this was a resounding success. It was delivered, and we achieved, you can see at the bottom there, all the benefits that we'd hoped to achieve. The only downside was, as we found out on a number of occasions here, is that some of these people that were empowered and then trained and qualified as project managers have actually left now and joined other authorities. We've actually lost about 3 of them. Now, we don't see that as a bad thing. We actually see it as a good thing because they helped us deliver a project and they've also managed to get something out of this. If I move to the last project, this was on litter management, so it gives you an idea of the different ranges. We've basically covered all of the services, and as Rebecca touched on earlier, you know, all of these projects and service reviews are fundamentally part of the specific service change program. So what we're trying to do here as well is get everybody, not just the people that we're training, but get everybody to work in a sort of wider team approach. In this litter management example, basically we managed to secure funding from Zero Waste Scotland to deliver a network of chip bins across the community. And again, as you can see at the bottom, there was a number of major benefits. But the thing I'd like to touch on there was that this particular candidate, who was really a service improvement officer, is now someone who has learned an immense amount of stuff, and we're actually putting forward to the SQA as someone who would like to introduce as an assessor and coach for other candidates. So, and we believe over the next 2 or 3 years, we've got about 4 or 5 people in that category who could actually, you know, help us really run these courses. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the range of projects and service reviews, and you can see it covers every service basically in the council. Moving to the next slide, the next steps for us, right at the top there, are to continue with this this program of project management and lean service reviews. So what we're hoping to do is continue with this every year and try and train up as many people as we possibly can. Now we're limited because there's only a small number of people in the PMO, but as I said a few minutes ago, the more people we get trained and the more experienced they become, that gives us a much bigger team to help train other people. So we're hoping that that'll increase year on year. And it might very well be the case that we're also looking at other things we can add into that particular program. So East Renfrewshire Council, we will continue with this program. Now from an external perspective, and the reason we're on this call today is that we're hoping that we can offer this to our colleagues right throughout Scotland, and they too can benefit from what we've tried to create here. There's a couple of key points. We're still waiting on formal external verification from the SQA, and what this really means is that the person coming in visiting us and making sure that, you know, they are confident that we have followed due process and met all the standards. Now so far we've had various discussions with them and they have given us a green light, but this is just a final verification to make sure that they're comfortable, can actually see and touch on what we've been doing. Then, as I said, what we're hoping to do is work with you and work with the improvement service in particular to offer this project qualification across all authorities in Scotland. What we've offered, Rebecca, who has been our key person in developing this programme in East Renfrewshire Council, would actually support the improvement service in helping take this across Scotland. We believe that some of the big authorities might not be interested in this, so our focus is maybe to, you know, push this and help, you know, the small to medium-sized authorities actually, you know, get some help here. The improvement service, we've also asked them to help us work with the SQA to move this to a more sort of digital platform. What we have today is there's a lot of manual workload with the SQA, not too much, but enough that suggests that as we move on here, we can actually probably automate this and move it to a more digital solution, the same way they've done with the schools. Okay, that's hopefully that gives you an idea of what we've been trying to achieve here. We're now going to open this, David, to question and answer session.
Thank you very much for that, Richard and Rebecca. That was very helpful and informative. Just to echo what Richard said at the end there, we are interested in supporting the spread of this qualification centrally, and if you have any questions or an expression of interest on how to on embedding this within your authority, then if you could please email myself or let me know that you are interested in the qualification, and we can work towards what might be suitable. Just to get straight into the questions, I'll go for Sheila Turnbull from Scottish Borders. We'll just take you off mute, Sheila. Hi, Sheila. Oh, sorry, Sheila doesn't actually have a microphone, so I'll just... what qualifications does the PMO have to enable them to deliver the Yellow Belt training?
We'll probably have a range of qualifications, and we can actually explain this in more detail. So there's an example of Prince 2, MSP. We also have to experience Six Sigma training. So what we had to do is basically we had to present the SQA with a CV for each of the assessors so that they could actually feel comfortable that the person has maybe many years of project management experience, not just management but successful management. They've also got some qualifications like a Prince 2 practitioner certificate or advanced, or they've actually got evidence of lean reviews, you know, Six Sigma training, etc., etc. So there's a whole bunch of different training in there. Hopefully that answers the question for Sheila. David?
Yep. Next one's Anne McFadden from Western Bartonshire. We'll just try you off mute, Anne. Hello, Anne.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you clear.
Yep. Brilliant, thanks. Good. I was just wondering what standards you set against the projects to ensure that maybe one person doesn't qualify if they're working on a 3-month project and another person has to be over a year. So it was.
It's a good question, Anne. In an example where a project is a longer life cycle, we might decide to chunk it up and do it in phases. So what they put in for their SQA return could be the first phase, which means, you know, maybe just delivering part of the project. But in terms of the organisational value, we sort of see that through to the end of the year in this scenario. But we might, for SQA purposes, cut it off at the 6-month mark as long as they have delivered a sort of end-to-end part of the project and we were able to phase and chunk it up in such a way to satisfy the SQA requirements. But for the organisation, we see it all the way through. So there's almost like 2 sets of documentation, if you like, to satisfy both parties.
No, that's good, thanks.
Okay, and next question comes from Lindis Davidson from Argyll and Bute. Hi, Lindis.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you clear.
Hi there. I was just wondering if the PMO is at the moment dealing with a small cohort every year because they don't have much resource. How are they going to cope with requests from other authorities?
That's a good question, and that's why we're having this discussion today, because what we're hoping is that the improvement service and those authorities themselves are actually going to pony up resources to actually support themselves. So what we're going to offer is all our experience and advice, any templates, any documentation that can be used. But what we're hoping is that the improvement service can actually help the other local authorities staff up and make the programme real in their council.
Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify that, so you would be thinking we would set up our own PMOs guided by what you've done already. Okay, all right, by the improvement service. So in that case, sorry to ask another question here, but we'd have to ask then whether the improvement service themselves are sufficiently qualified to help us with these kind of trainings.
It's a good question, Linda. Right now I think that it would take a bit of a reshuffle for us to be able to support that. What the purpose of today's webinar was really just to see if there was an interest in this qualification and whether we could spread that across local authorities. So
That's fair enough.
if there is sufficient interest, then we can have a look at how we invest a bit of time into this work, and we can see how we can support organisations going forward. I think that what our preferred option would be is if we currently offer the Customer First Professional Award that's done online. So I think, as Richard mentioned earlier on, that we'd be looking to work with the SQA to see how we could perhaps digitalise this qualification and support it centrally as an administration point. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, that does.
Right.
Yeah, and David, what would like to add to Linda, obviously we can give some help. It's just that we can't go out and help train every authority.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
There's other help that we can give.
Yeah, we can certainly help do a skills transfer, Linda, you know, in terms of the material, and if you had identified PMO type change people in the organisation, we could do a sort of skills transfer, show them material, here's how we train it out, here's how we facilitate the coaching sessions and that sort of thing, and give a kind of really robust manual, a how-to to support them doing it. But they've got to actually do it, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Next question's from Doreen Walkinshaw from North Ayrshire. Hello, Doreen.
I don't have a mic, that's why I put it in.
You do have a mic, we can hear you. Okay, I'll just ask, how much of PMO time is spent on training and development, and how much is spent on project support and delivery?
Good question.
Collectively, I would say we run 2 courses a year. So one course is a group of people who would apply to be yellow belts and SQA candidates. So in terms of training, it's 2 people from the PMO that train each day with the group. And for a candidate that does yellow belt and SQA collectively, that is 4 full days training for these 2 PMO members to be out. And then that's followed up by all the coaching sessions. So if each group has maybe 8 to 10 candidates, there's a coaching of 4 to 6 hours overall, I would say. For candidates that only do yellow belt, it's only 2 days training, and again it's 2 PMO people who would train those 2 full days, followed up by coaching. So in effect it's sort of 6 training days a year overall, plus the relative coaching time, and the rest of our own time is actually delivering our own change projects and programmes for the organisation.
So to answer Doreen, give a bit more detail on the PMO time, we probably have to spend maybe for each of the people we're coaching 1 or 2 hours a week. You know, over a set period. And again, we're also available on call if someone phones us with a 5-minute question or something. So it's quite flexible.
Okay, so
moving. Hope that answers your question, Doreen.
Okay, so moving on, the next question is from Anne-Marie Johnson from Falkirk Council. Hi, Anne-Marie. Hello. Just asked that one as well. Can you please clarify in which order you do these qualifications, PD then yellow belt?
It's a very good question, Anne-Marie, because previously, because we were trying to pull together our yellow belt qualification, we were a bit back to front and we started with the PDA and project management and then we did yellow belt, but that's actually not the logical way to do it. So this year we're about to go to advert for our next intake, and we're going to start by doing yellow belt training first. So the candidates go through the process of understanding how to go and baseline a service, do the process mapping, end to end, all that sort of stuff. And at the end of that, they signpost whichever kind of change projects would be relevant to that service. For them to take their SQA part forward, they do that training and they take forward one project they've identified from their service review yellow belt stuff, and that's what they take forward to deliver their SQE qualification on. So it should be yellow belt first, then PBA, because that's the sort of structure that we've embedded in terms of our approach to change generally.
Okay, next question's from Roy here. He's just wondering if this webinar is available as a recording. Yes, it is available as a recording, and we will be sharing details of how to access the slides and the recording following the webinar. It'll probably be early next week by the time that that's out. The next question's back to Sheila Turnbull at Borders. Hi Sheila. Hello Sheila. Sorry, Sheila's just starting with her Lean Six Sigma, and we have a company in to deliver the training. So she was wondering what you had to do to enable you to deliver the yellow belt yourselves.
Sheila, I would say that I was originally changed by a private company many years ago in Lean Six Sigma to black belt level, as we call it in Six Sigma. In terms of translating that into a council context, I would say it's quite problematic because to be purist about the Six Sigma qualification, it's incredibly heavy on statistical analysis that sometimes is actually more focused on the manufacturing origins of where Six Sigma came from, and not terribly well converted into service industries and indeed councils. So when we deliver our yellow belt training, we sort of use their experience to tweak what would be traditionally taught by private companies in terms of green belt, black belt, etc. And we've sort of watered down the statistical analysis section, but really to make it more focused on what the sort of data councils have and the sort of analysis that would be more relevant in a council situation, and kind of taking it away from defect rates and that sort of thing, which maybe some of the private companies focus on because that's where the qualification originated from, like Motorola and that sort of thing. So we've changed the emphasis, made it council specific, and I guess although we call our qualification yellow belt, I would say in terms of gauging, it's probably more like a green belt, which is higher level than yellow belt. But because we've kind of watered down a little bit of the statistical stuff, we couldn't badge it as green belt in case anyone challenges on it. So we've called it yellow belt to be safe, but we have changed the emphasis to make it council focused, so that we don't get taken down a rabbit hole by kind of trying to get people to understand standard deviations and all this sort of thing. It would just blow their minds in this organisation anyway, so we've tailored it appropriately.
Okay, so I think that's all the questions for today. So I'll just switch over to my screen quickly and send you a couple of useful links. As mentioned, the webinar will be the recordings from the webinar will be shared. You just hold on a minute. Okay, so you should be able to see a couple of groups that we use here. All outputs from today will be shared on the Change Managers Network Scotland and Knowledge Hub group. We have been running this webinar series for about 9 months, so we do also share these on our staff website, and if you have interest in accessing any of the previous ones, then please let me know. And if you have any inquiries or want any further information about the webinar series, then please contact myself at david.morton@improvementservice.org.uk. So I hope that session's been useful for you, and if you have any questions, then please let me know. We have a small follow-up survey that will come automatically pop up following the webinar, so if you could fill that out and give all the feedback you can, then we can continue to develop our programme. Thanks for attending today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard and Rebecca.
Yep. Thanks, David.